Whose story will you be a part of?
And I can only imagine that someone who's been told that they're infected with HIV, I can only imagine what that must feel like. And so a hug, an encouraging word, that regardless of how you got here, the fact is it doesn't have to destroy you.
I don't think that people really understand the gravity of this. I don't think people really understand the devastation that this causes. I mean, just an African-American community now. Look at Washington, D.C., our nation's capital. 4% of African-Americans in our nation's capital are infected with HIV. 3% of all people living in our nation's capital, think about that, in our nation's capital are infected by HIV. That is an epidemic. At its height in San Francisco in the 80s, it was only 3%. And it's surpassing that. And the worst thing is that they're saying they're not even sure those numbers are right. In fact, they're pretty sure they're low. So we're looking at something that's growing and gaining steam, and people don't seem to realize that. So a big part of our mission and our job is to educate people about the fact that this isn't going away. And this is something that they can acquire if they don't practice safer sex. And also that this is something that people should care about because it's impacting individuals, it's impacting families, it's impacting communities, and it's going to continue to do that until we make it a national priority.
I'm Chad Dion Lassiter. I'm an adjunct professor at the University of Pennsylvania, where I teach courses on American racism, gender-biased discrimination to graduate students in social work. Well, what brought me to Bebashi is that I've had a professional relationship with Gary Bell for an extended period of time, but I heard the clarion call about a year ago when a family member of mine informed our family that he had HIV/AIDS and was diagnosed in 1991. Even though I'm a board member, my family member and my family, we actually bring our particular family member to Bebashi. We make sure that this is something that we do, but you get that at a place like Bebashi, the warmthness, and I think what happens is what our family is attempting to do is get other families on board to recognize that there's strength in families and that we don't need to stigmatize the person. We don't need to marginalize the person. Let's continue to love the person like we would love an individual who didn't have HIV/AIDS. And so at a place like Bebashi is just one of those amazing things that when we're looking at Bebashi, Transition to Hope, is that it is a place of hope. It's not a gloom or doom environment where you're coming in and it's like, wow, I'm HIV infected, the world is coming to an end. Because the staff here and the administrators here are not going to let you have that mindset. What they're going to do is instill hope, they're going to instill faith, they're going to let you know that these are the things that you need to do.
One of the things I am most often asked is, why do I do this? Isn't it depressing, But when you look at the numbers, and I understand numbers are numbers, but they do represent people. And when you look at the numbers, I mean, for years the CDC used to report, well, it's stabilized. It's 40,000 new infections every year. But then last year they came out and said, well, it's actually more like 56,000, okay? And now we're seeing the numbers continue to go up, especially in poor people and especially in communities of color. Half of the new infections are in African Americans. And the fastest growing group of people being infected are African American women. Following closely behind that are young people, because again, half of the new infections are people under the age of 25. In Philadelphia, it's even more obvious who's being impacted the most. Last year, I think we had about 14,000 new infections of HIV, and despite the myths that prevail that it is a gay disease, 55% of those new infections were a result of high-risk heterosexual activity. We're seeing more younger people. We're certainly seeing more minorities. 68% of the infections are people living with HIV, and about 65% of the new infections were in African Americans. So even though Bebashi serves everyone, clearly the people who are being impacted the most by HIV are people of African descent and to a certain extent Latinos as well. I think this is a thread throughout this organization. We have no intention of letting this continue to destroy the people of Philadelphia or the people of this country. So we take this challenge that we have. We're going to beat this thing. We're going to win this battle. I have no doubt about that.
How will you join the fight against HIV/AIDS in your community?